Everybody's busy during the holiday season, so if you're looking for a quick, easy way to keep your audience engaged with what you're doing during this time of year, I have an idea for you. Today we're going to talk about how covering a Christmas song can be a quick, easy, and even fun way to keep your audience engaged during the holiday season. Hi, I'm Brian from Unmute Your Muse TV, where we teach 5-minute masterclasses for songwriters. Our mission is to help you write the kinds of songs that people are going to love, buy, and tell their friends about using the Gold Song Solution. I love Christmas music. I really do. It brings back lots of wonderful childhood memories. And for the last at least 10 years, I've been trying to write at least one Christmas song every season and record it and send it out to friends and family just for the fun of doing it, just because I love these songs and I love the kinds of things you can do with them. So let me give you a couple reasons why I think covering a Christmas song might be a good idea for you and your audience engagement. First of all, everybody already knows these Christmas songs. They're played ad nauseum on the radio, starting, seems like before Halloween this year, was it? Did I actually hear some Christmas music on a couple radio stations, like the end of October? I think that actually did happen. So yeah, people know these tunes. They know the melodies, which can be a little bit of a downside, but we'll talk about that in a second. Another great thing about covering Christmas songs is that many of them are so old that they're in the public domain, so you don't have to worry about any copyright issues or getting permission from anybody to use them. Now, it's not all of them, but a lot of the great carols are that way, which is pretty cool. Many of the tunes also have these just amazing melodies that have lasted, the test of time. The reason that these particular Christmas carols are still being played on the radio today is they're the ones that survived. They're the ones that got people hooked and have melodies that have worked themselves down deep into the soul of our very culture. Now, the fact that everybody knows these melodies has some pros and cons with it. For one thing, everybody's going to be able to sing along really easily as soon as they hear your tune. You're going to have to find some ways to make a Christmas song interesting. When people have heard 50 different versions of Carol of the Bells, if you're going to make a cover of that, you're going to have to come up with a way to grab their attention, to bring something new to the table. And I usually find that as a very fun challenge. This is a way to take a great melody and put my own spin on it, bring my personality to bear. Another one of the issues is that some of the really old carols do have some complex harmonizations in their original form. These were written for either 4-part choirs or for, a vocal line with a complicated piano arrangement that goes along with it, with a chord that changes during every single beat of the song. And that can be kind of tricky for modern instrumentation, where our chords tend to last a little longer. So that can present some pretty interesting challenges. So now what I'm going to do is talk you through a couple of the things that I think you can try to make a Christmas cover your own, and to make the process just a little bit easier. So here are 8 ideas for you to take a Christmas song that you want to cover and make it your own. Number 1, it has to be your style, your genre. You still want to sound like you doing the Christmas song. Just because it's a Christmas song doesn't mean you need to abandon everything you've ever stood for musically. Number 2, this is a little tricky, but I've had this work out with a number of Christmas carols. If you can try changing the time signature, maybe if it's a straight 4/4 beat, just give it a little more space and see if it can work in 6/8 or vice versa. There's some really fun ways you can try and mess around with that. Number 3. Sometimes you can keep the melody the same, but totally change the chords that are going on underneath it. You can even, for example, the one that I'm doing this year, I'm doing a very minor version of Jolly Old St. Nicholas. So you can change the whole scale that's going on in the background behind the song. And that doesn't necessarily need to affect the melody, although you might need to tweak it here or there. But putting things in a different key, you can try relative minor, throw some parallel minor chords in there. Just anything to keep it interesting, to give it, if you're used to hearing, in my example, Jolly Old St. Nicholas is normally this happy, heartwarming song, and all of a sudden I'm putting this dark, almost macabre kind of twist onto it. People are going to be like, okay, why are you doing that? Where are you going with this? So it's kind of a good way to grab attention. Number 4, if there are a lot of chords in the original version of the Christmas song or Christmas carol that you're covering, one technique is to try and just let the melody float over top of one chord that you're planing underneath it for a while. Or sometimes I've seen some really good covers where they pick a groove or just a riff of some kind or another that they keep going underneath a good chunk of the verse, or maybe even the whole verse, and just let that really intricate, fun Christmas melody float over top of this one chord that you have going on at the bottom. That's a fun technique to try. Number 5, you could try adding an interesting hook in between the verses, or something melodic that's going on in the background, or like even adding a small chorus that wasn't there originally. Like a lot of times, some of the old carols, they may or may not have a little refrain tagged on to the end of the verse, but they don't necessarily have a chorus. But if you could, write a short little thing that you can drop in between some of the verses, that can be an extra way to add a little space, make it your own, add something original to it. Number 6, and we're getting into some risky territory here. One way that is sure to grab people's attention would be to change the melody a little bit. Now, there are some ways, I've seen people try and do this where they just take just a little tweak to something to make it their own, and that's cool. You can do your own little vocal arrangement depending on what your singer can do. Other people have scrapped the original melody entirely and just kept the same words and gone on to just to essentially make whole new music for the song. Just kept the words. It has some pros and cons, and you have to make an informed and intelligent decision about whether or not you think that is a good thing for what you're doing. You lose the fact that everybody already knows the melody, and that's one of the biggest strengths of covering a Christmas song, is that people come to it already being able to sing along. So that goes away. But you get really big beaucoup points on the attracting people's attention. They're like, oh, I know these words, but this isn't how this is supposed to sound. So that's, some pros and cons, something to weigh there. I've seen it work really well. I've seen it really turn a lot of people off. That's up to you. Give it a try. If you think you like the result, go for it. Number 7, along the same kind of vein, you can try even tweaking the lyrics sometimes. Now I've seen some people do this where, for example, a lot of the old Christmas carols have some general thoughts about warmth and goodwill, but then, in the third verse, that starts bringing in some really overt religious overtones that some people may or may not want to be involved in their song. And I've seen people try and write some of that out, or just tweak a couple words here and there, maybe to make things a little more up to date. If a lot of these carols are written in the 19th century, and some of the references don't necessarily make any sense anymore, to try and update things a little bit, that's something to do. Or what I'm doing for my Christmas song this year, my version of Jolly Old St. Nicholas, I'm keeping the first verse, but then I've totally changed the rest of the verses. I've made entirely new verses, kept the same melody, and now keep the general structure of things the same. But they're really updated for what's going on in the world, very specifically to 2019. So that's a way that I'm going to be grabbing people's attention with my song. And last idea, number 8, if you are doing one of those Christmas carols that has a ton of verses, it's okay to do a ton of verses. I think that's a form of music that people can still resonate with. But one thing that you will have to pay attention to is if you are going to be doing more than 2 or 3 verses, that you need to keep things interesting in some way, shape, or form. So maybe you throw a key change somewhere in there, or the instrumentation has to change as you're going along with it, or maybe you even change the mode that you're using to harmonize things. Like maybe some of them have a major background, and then maybe at some point you switch and you're using chords from the relative minor in order to give it just a different feel for some of those verses. Just keep it interesting as you're going along. All right, well, I hope those ideas helped, and I would really love to hear what you guys are working on. If you've got any Christmas songs that you have covered in the past, feel free to go over to our Facebook group. If you're not a member of the Facebook group already, please join it. It's called Unmute Your Muse. Should be easy to find. We'll also have a link in the show notes underneath this. And if you've got a song that you're working on right now and you want some help with some ideas, throw it out there. Well, there's plenty of people there who would love to help and critique and give you some suggestions. And if you do record something new this season, go ahead and put it up, and we'll check it out for you. So thanks for listening. I hope you have a Merry Christmas, and may your songwriting be holly jolly. Merry Christmas.